Well, hi everybody. I'm Elad from Craft.io. I'm the CEO of Craft.io. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Really appreciate making the time. I'm super excited today. I have to say, I'm specifically delighted. We do these webinars from time to time, and I'm very, very excited to host today Matt Jackson, my friend and partner in crime on some aspects.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt. Matt is, for those who don't know, is a group product manager at Kingfisher, and is responsible for a lot of things in Kingfisher. For those who don't know, Kingfisher is one of the largest retailers in Europe, but I'll let Matt talk about all that in a minute. So just to keep kind of housekeeping rules, first of all, thanks a lot for joining. As I said, feel free to ask questions. Yes, there's like a Q&A button in the Zoom thingy, but you can also just use the chat and ask questions, and we'll try to answer them. We might not answer them at the moment that you ask them, but please keep them coming on the chat, and then we'll make sure that we'll try to get at least as many as we can during this session. So that's kind of it. No other rules besides that. And with that in mind, let's get things started. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just going to say very quickly now, I am not this red, by the way. I'm in our new office here in Paddington in West London, and the lighting is extremely harsh. It makes me look like I'm permanently embarrassed. I'm not. I'm a lovely pale-skinned English person.
Thank you for that.
I keep looking at myself and thinking, I look like a beetroot, which is not good.
Thanks for the practice. By the way, one of my favorite routes. So regardless, I think it's a great session. Matt, kind of to get us going, would love for you to kind of share a little bit about your background. Obviously, you've been in the retail world for a long time. I try not to say long too much so it doesn't feel like you're too old, but you know what I mean. And so I'd love to get from you, first of all, just like a kind of an introduction into who you are and what you do and what you did. So that would be a good way to kick us off.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Matt Jackson. I'm a group product manager here at Kingfisher. Just for those who are uninitiated, Kingfisher is a home improvement retailer, very much like Home Depot in the United States or Leroy Merlin in Europe. Kingfisher operates out of 8 European countries across a number of different banners. So we have B&Q in the UK, Castorama in France and Poland, and brick-and-mortar in France, Spain, Portugal, Romania, and France. If I think I said that one. And we have a subsidiary company called Koçtaş in Turkey, and we also have another banner called Screwfix, which I don't really work with so much. They're kind of based in the UK and France as well, and when I say UK, I include Ireland in there as well. So that's kind of Kingfisher. As I said, I'm a group product manager. I look after an area that's currently titled Click and Collect, Home Delivery and Store Control. So it's pretty much everything that goes on within our stores. So inventory management, goods receipting, stock control, managing loss, etc. In managing of locations, so where stock is located and so forth. But also as well, the very core part is the picking of customer web orders. So also, that's a very, very crucial part to us, because that's a key part of our customer strategy, being able to serve what's called in Kingfisher stores at the center of e-commerce. So we pick most of our orders from our stores, because an average Kingfisher store is kin to something like a retailing, but it's a warehouse as well. So we hold lots and lots of stock within our stores.
I guess that's because the item size is pretty vast, right? So
you end up and very interesting. Our item sizes range from something as small as my nail to something that actually requires 4 or 5 people. So you can buy a swimming pool in some of our stores. So yeah, it's very far greater item variation than you say find in the grocery or even a department store. So that's me. Kind of, I'll give a bit of background. So Elad didn't want to mention the years, but I've been working out for 35 years, which is kind of scary when it adds up, because it still feels like the 22nd of April 1988 when I did my first evening in Waitrose in a North London suburb. So Waitrose being a grocery retailer in the UK. I'll just quickly flick up I'll share a very quick kind of slide. I won't share all the slides, but I'll just share.
My life in a slide, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there is more to my life. I do have a family as well. So
I know.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. I'd say my family would beg to differ on that one. Right,
yeah.
now this time, not this time for you. Please work. Right, stop sharing. Yeah, okay, fine. Right, so obviously Craft is not liking that. So I'm just going to Zoom is not liking that. So I'm just going to reshare again. Right, so entire screen. There we go. Share. And hopefully this time it
we can
will.
see.
Yeah. So this just kind of gives a background here. So I spent 7 years at Waitrose and Partners. So Waitrose, as I said, is a grocery retailer here in the UK. That was 7 years in stores. So I literally did every role in the store. That was where it kind of lit the fire in me for retail. I originally wanted to be a journalist. That's what I was kind of doing my studies for, to become a journalist. Started working there age 16 on the weekend, and you know what, just bit me, and I loved it. I loved the immediacy of it. I loved the thrill of customers. I loved the thrill of selling, and it just took over me like a fire. And these were the days as well, when you could do as much overtime as you wanted as well. So I did a fair few 60, 70, 80-hour weeks in those days. But because I just loved being there. It was like a surrogate at home almost. Not to say I didn't love my parents, obviously, and enjoy being at home, but it kind of and I carried on working there all throughout my remaining education whilst I did my degree. So it kind of bit me. And then went to Sainsbury's, which is Britain's second largest food retailer, for just under 17 years. Started off in stores, so initially as a graduate trainee, and then a department manager in stores in and around London for a number of years before moving into an operational role in supply chain for a couple of years, where we're looking at centralized forecasting, for then moving into another role in supply chain.
Just to give people some kind of like at this time, like e-commerce, online retail, that's not a thing, right? I mean, 1988.
Well, interestingly, the store I was in Watford, North London, was Sainsbury's first store to trial e-commerce in 1997.
Wow.
So yeah, very, very different world then. Very, very different. Very, very different.
I can imagine.
Incredibly different, as you can well imagine. But then I did a lot of time in Sainsbury's in central retail, involved in a massive £1.5 billion transformation program, which hit pretty much every part of Sainsbury's, and I was kind of a business SME focusing on our kind of store systems and replacing an old mainframe-based system with a web-based system based on Retech, now Oracle, as such. I take great pride in the fact that since it went live in 2004, it's still in use at Sainsbury's. So when I do pop in Sainsbury's, I do peer over their shoulder to see it's still in use, which is quite pleasing. But in there as well. So that was a role in central retail, then did a coaching role before moving into technology. And by chance, we were doing product management before product management even existed. The things we were doing in enhancing the system had so many parallels with what I do today and what I've learned.
But at the time, it wasn't called product management. You were not.
No, it wasn't called product management, and I wasn't called a product manager. But we were using data, to hypothesize. We were testing and learning. We were doing all the things we do in product management, just then, and obviously just making it happen. But we didn't know we were doing it at the time. But a great learning. But every step along the way here has helped. So even my time in stores helped, because that puts you right in the face of the customer, because there you're face to face with the customers, and customers can be lovely and customers can be very nasty as well. So actually being able to see customers, being able to see their problems, but also being a store user as well, seeing the problems, the things that make your life more difficult, how processes and things you do could be easier, how the tech you use could be easier. I kind of absorbed all of that. And one of the things I've kind of done over the 35 years, I've just observed and absorbed constantly as I've gone along. So moving on from Sainsbury's, obviously, as I said, I did 5 years in kind of technology there before going to John Lewis and Partners. So John Lewis being Britain's largest department store chain. I was working on a big ERP transformation, so replacing a lot of legacy systems with the Oracle Retail Suite. But again, we touched on lots of things around, how are we shifting this company forward and how we're changing the mindset. Did the same at Debenhams, who are sadly deceased now, department store chain in the UK, again working on another big transformation around buying, merchandising, finance, distribution and stores, before going to Tesco in my first true product management role.
This is where you're officially, in 2017, that's where officially you got anointed as a product manager, kind of?
Officially became a true product manager with it in the title, albeit, obviously I've done a variety of roles over the years, but Tesco,
of course.
Where I worked initially on their distribution side for 3 years, which was product manager in a 38-year-old mainframe that runs their distribution. So yeah, you can imagine that was a slightly different way of product managing, before also before working on the grocery home shopping side and being involved in a transformation there of replacing a legacy system that was 18 years old with a new kind of service-driven kind of system. Also worked on that, when COVID landed, which was there was always an ambition at Tesco to go from 600,000 orders to 1 million within 3 years. And we went from 600,000 to 1.5 million within 8 weeks. So it's amazing, sometimes what a pandemic can help you get done. But yeah, again, as with every other bit in the background, just learning, absorbing along the way, has been key. Before coming to Kingfisher, just over 2 years ago now, and bringing product management in here. And what's been interesting is you kind of look at all of these companies. They've all gone through product transformations, and they've all gone through at different times as well. And it's been interesting watching how those companies have done the transformations, how those transformations have landed, the pratfalls, the things that have worked, the things that haven't worked. And all of that, again, you've absorbed, you've learned, and then, taken best practice, taken worst practice, and then, just build that into your own kind of learnings. And then coming to Kingfisher, if I'm to be honest, we're probably about 2-3 years behind Tesco in terms of the product journey. So there was kind of like a stepping back a little, but then bringing in things like craft is part of that journey to help Kingfisher move on its product journey. And Kingfisher is probably now well into the foothills of its product journey. I mean, British retail is quite interesting because it's super competitive, both with local and international competitors. It's super intense because we're a tightly packed little island as well, so sales densities are usually way above the rest of the world as well. But also, as kind of British companies are always in this constant, because it's super competitive, it means everyone's constantly transforming all of the time, and therefore that makes it quite thrilling and quite exciting. Okay,
great. So
that's a bit of background. There's a fair bit there. Apologies.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's amazing to see. I mean, again, one as somebody who lived in the UK for quite some time, I agree. I mean, British retail is probably one of the most interesting retail landscapes in the world, with a lot of innovation. You can see the names here. I mean, Tesco is a global player, Sainsbury's is kind of a global player, and of course, Kingfisher a global player as well. And so it's quite cool to see, and even Waitrose, they have like the Ocado innovation. Like there's a lot of innovation going on in a lot of these players, and which I think is fascinating when it comes to the world of retail in the UK market. Now, getting into Kingfisher. So first of all, again, thanks for the background. Going into Kingfisher, before we go into the whole world of transformation, which is, by the way, we haven't said, but is the topic of our conversation today predominantly, right? So we want to talk a lot about this idea of product transformation. And what does it actually mean? And I assume some of the people who are on the call today with us today are kind of interested in that space of this product transformation. What does it actually mean, especially in large enterprises, and specifically in the world of retail, if that's the case. So I'd love to get a sense from you, how, like just in very high level, like not a huge kind of thing. How does the world of product look like right now in Kingfisher? Just like facts and figures, whatever you can share, of course, like just in terms of facts and figures, roughly, how does the team look like? And in some cases, I think for some people, it's not very obvious what do product managers actually do in this context of shops and retail, etc. But again, the very high level, so just so we can give us the ability to dive into the world of product transformation.
Yeah, so in terms of products at Kingfisher, as I said, it's an evolving beast at the moment, but where we are, we probably have around about 15 to 16 kind of product teams currently, and they traverse what we call the customer facing side. So you have very much what we call our digital experience world, so our websites and the tools that we use to support our customers. We kind of have our kind of fulfillment side, so actually kind of products that I work on, which are kind of more colleague facing, which our colleagues use to kind of do their kind of jobs around that. And then kind of in the middle, you kind of have services. So, you know, people don't really have a front end, but actually they kind of connect everything together. What Kingfisher has around it as well is, obviously, like most companies, we have a big e-commerce solution, ATG. We have a big ERP, i.e. SAP as well. So we have to work in with those as well. And Kingfisher being a large company, and a company now that's probably it's over 50 years old, we've built up a legacy of systems over time. So we have some things that are very cutting edge, and some things that are, you know, potentially could be seen as in the dark ages. And I found that's true in every company. When I was at Tesco, their retired assistant was 45 years old. When I was at John Lewis, they had a system that had been written in 1965. So yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine what code that was in. But yeah, it's interesting, you know, because an older company, you build up all these legacy systems, so the architecture is constantly evolving. So you, as a product team, you have to be very cognizant of what's going on around you, rather than just like, oh, it's just about my product. Actually, what I can do with my product sometimes is restricted by what legacy goes on around it. So one of the key areas for Kingfisher at the moment is ATG decomposition. So that is just kicking off. So the plan is to replace, obviously, our e-commerce solution. There are some solutions in place to do that, but when you take something like an ERP or like a commerce solution, you know, your ERP is your heart of the business. Your commerce solution is the lungs. You can't take the lungs out and, you know, expect everything to work out. And it's one of those things you have to kind of work over a number of years. I've likened it almost to like a delicatessen. You've got a ham that has 1,000 slices. We're going to have to slice it slice by slice by slice by slice. And my team play a part in that. So we're doing something around event-driven architecture to remove our dependency and put Kafka in. So these are some of the key things that kind of Kingfisher is working on. Said where Kingfisher,
in terms of the team size, roughly, just to get a sense of.
So in terms of myself, I have, you know, 4 direct reports as POs, but I matrix manage a team at its peak that was around about 63 colleagues. So that's kind of engineering, business analysis, design and research, and Scrum Masters as well. I see.
So, and in terms of the broader Kingfisher product landscape, about a couple of hundreds, I guess, of people.
Yeah, so it's probably say we're probably getting close to about 150, 200 kind of people in that space. But
yeah, which sorry, go ahead.
Which is where we're moving as a business. We're moving away from being more what we call delivery-led and waterfall kind of project-led to into a product world. So areas like infrastructure, networks, etc., which classically tend to work in a certain way, are moving into a more product sphere. So product management as a role will just grow, just as it has in many other companies. They started off in one area and they expand out over time. Saw that at Tesco, anecdotally talking with colleagues who've been at Sainsbury's, etc., they've all followed the same model. We start small and we build out the product, the mindset, broader and broader.
So that leads me very elegantly. So first of all, thanks for that. I really appreciate leads me very elegantly into this idea of product mindset or product shift. You know, or like this change that is happening, and you're describing this, I mean, very pointedly. You know, in a very complex environment, right? So I mean, retail it's however you want to describe it, it's an old school environment in many senses, right? So it's been around for, most of these companies have been around for a while. Ignoring that, their technology stack in many cases has been around for a while as well, right? So like so these, like, and you mentioned, you know, like changing a system from 1964, which, you know, I honestly didn't know that, you know, computers were a big thing then, but I guess they were. But you know what I mean? That kind of those kind of environments are the environments where you and your colleagues in the world of product kind of operate. And you're saying it's been spreading out, right? So this is like a movement that has been going on in Kingfisher in terms of like becoming this product organization. Where would you put yourself right now? I don't know if it's a score or an evolutionary step, or do you feel that you're now a mature product organization, or you're like kind of on your way kind of thing?
No, we're definitely on our way. And obviously, this is just my personal view. Obviously, yeah, other people in Kingfisher may have slightly different views. I can't even know if I was to say I've got Everest and it's 29,500 feet up, we're probably about 6,000 feet up now. But we know some of our other companies out there. There's other companies in the UK who are literally at the base. You know, there's other companies who are at 10,000, 17,000.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's really at 29,000 yet, but, you know, because as I keep saying, retailers are like a spider's web with so many interconnected parts.
Yeah.
Products and technology is just an enabler and a supporting bit in many instances. There's so many other aspects to a retailer that are beyond product. And one of the common confusions you often get, and I always see on LinkedIn, is like, oh yeah, you work in product, and people think I formulate products. I go and choose the honey that we're going to sell, or I go and I can say, actually, I'm going to make these brooms. And I was like, no, it's not. So even in the wider ecosphere, there isn't a true understanding of products yet.
I did want to talk to you about honey. No, no, not really. But I hear you. By the way, that's a very common confusion between like the physical, like the people who manage the physical products and the people who manage the technology products. Yeah, of course. And so that's absolutely clear. So you're on your journey. You're saying, and so talk to me a little bit about, and you went through this journey also on a personal basis, right? So, you started in store, like facing customers, like, understanding the business from the bottom, which by the way, I love that I think many product managers should, if not go through the whole journey, at least experience it from time to time, because we talk today about how important it is to be customer centric for a product manager, right? And I think you've had that from the get-go, just by your career kind of thing. But talk to me a little bit about this shift that is happening in the company, and specifically in terms of we talk about this product mindset, and let's try to define it for a moment, like in terms of I think you and we've been talking about this for quite some time. We agree on broadly the definition of what product management, like modern product management, how does that look like? In terms of customer centricity, focus on outcomes versus outputs. There's a lot of these buzzwords kind of like going around, and you have these old school companies, which are built on technology, which we discussed, and also with a mindset that was very, and correct me if I'm wrong here, very delivery focused, like extremely business comes and says, I need a system, go build me kind of thing, right? So how does that shift look like? And like, just kind of whatever you can describe it.
It's a hearts and minds shift. Ultimately, it's there's no other shortcuts around it. You're having to shift someone's hearts and minds. And the best way, someone said to me at Tesco, was like, show me the value of product management, and then I'll start believing in it. And actually, it was because they say, well, this way has worked for 50, 100 years, etc. So why do I need to change it now? And obviously, if you're a retailer in distress, making changes is a bit easier, but often retailers are quite successful, so you get that challenge of, well, why do I need to change? So for me, it is a hearts and minds kind of piece. It's kind of, you need to almost sell. I kind of describe it often. I say, I'm dealing with people and they're facing north, and I want them to face them south. And as a kind of bit of stakeholder management, saying, well, how do I move them through north, northeast, east, northeast, east, etc. And every person or every team you deal with is going to be slightly different. But again, it's that, how do you convince them that actually, being product led, using data, listening to your customer, listening to your colleagues is kind of the key thing. It's interesting to see how different companies have done it. So Tesco used probably the best example, and they invested a lot of money in sending everyone through, sending most of the key business people, all of product, all of our key business stakeholders through Silicon Valley product training. So Marty Kagan, the same, investing, hundreds, thousands of pounds, putting hundreds of people through this training, and then building an agile coaching team around that training to then repeat that training. So that because then you have the very senior leadership of the business going through it as well, that executed that mind shift. And any mind shift, which is really key, is you have to have senior leadership buy-in. If there isn't someone at the board level championing it, it's never going to happen. Or someone in a senior position.
I'll stop you on that, because that's a super interesting point. So you're saying in Tesco, that happened, it sounds like from the top down, basically saying, we want to do a re-education process of saying, hey, why don't you all go learn from one of the gods of product management, Marty Kagan and team in that sense, and take them through this journey of transformation, really from the top down and like from the outside in kind of thing. However, I suspect maybe in Kingfisher and in many other companies that's not the case, right? So in many cases it's like, and I actually like your analogy of like, so I like your analogy of like shifting slowly people to the other direction. Eventually, we have a question on the chat, which I think kind of talks about that kind of specifically, like how can you convince an old school company that they need to transform? And I think that's at the heart of this. And so talk me through this. You mentioned, what are your personal, if you're sitting in front of a person in a room, senior, middle management, whatever it is you want, who is like not bought into this notion of product management, and why is it important to have a product management? What are your, I don't know, top 3-4 things that you would tell them to say, hey, that's why you should be like thinking about this differently, from your perspective at least?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a point. Often people don't see a need for change, because if the business is going well, it makes it very difficult to change.
Of course.
But the way you're going to position it is actually what we do today is it's about looking to the future. So where is the future heading? So you kind of bring in all of the things that are going on around us. AI, all the new technology trends that are happening. You can use the examples as well of lots of businesses who were amazingly successful, who now cease to exist as well, because they did not change. So that's one of the starting points. Saying, changes, we're not changing just for the sake of changing. We are changing to preempt the market, because it's there used to be a great analogy when I was at Sainsbury's. The CEO there used to say, he goes, if you strike first, that gives you 18 months headwind. It takes everyone 18 months to catch up. So actually, you make the change first, even though the change doesn't appear obvious. It can take 18 months to catch up. And what you don't want to do is following, because actually you don't want to say, well, everyone else is following, because actually you say, well, we don't need to change now. Sales are good. And British retailing is littered with retailers who thought, we're on the side of angels. Our sales are magnificent. And then they fall on a cliff. We take Marks and Spencer's a fantastic example. They were untouchable in the 90s, actually untouchable. And then the 2000s, whoa, talk about a collapse. Then they got up again, then they collapsed again, and now with Archie Norman, the guy called Stuart Mason, there, they are proper flying again. They are through the roof, probably pound for pound, probably the best retailer in the UK at the moment. But for many years, they're considered untouchable, and it's helping people understand the road to not change. By not changing, just because things are going well now does not mean they will necessarily go well in the future. I mean, one of my ex-employers, for many years, had probably 25 years of unbroken success. They've probably been in a bad place now for the last 5 years, but the seeds were sown many, many years before. Yeah. And it's helping people understand, saying actually, right, do you think what you do today will work in 5 years' time, given technology change, given consumers have changed? I mean, if you think of the mobile smartphone revolution, how it's completely pivoted. If you were planning in 2003, saying, we'll do everything via desktops, desktop, you'd be dead in the water. You'd be dead in the water now. So it's helping people see, it's trying to get them to see beyond today and beyond tomorrow. What does the future like? That's where you kind of start. That's where you kind of start.
So that's fantastic, and I think that really I think resonates with a lot, especially with the senior leadership kind of thing, because in many cases senior leadership doesn't need to fully understand the bits and bytes of the world of product management. I think they need to get a sense of like, hey, if you're not competitive and agile I'm not even talking about agile as a software development methodology, agile in the very basic sense of the word, of like saying, hey, I can shift my ways easily, then I can then it's very difficult to recover from that. Oh, hello. Oh, Matt, I think I lost you for a moment. Either you or me. One second. Can you guys still hear me? Is this yes, we lost. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I was like, okay, is this my internet, or let's wait for Matt to join in a second. As I was saying, by the way, I think this kind of mindset shift is something that is, it is quite difficult to achieve, but it's something that for a lot of people, that's like the key thing to focus on, because especially if you're working in a company that is, it's not there yet. It's kind of difficult it's kind of difficult to do without that, right? So without that shift, it's always going to be a struggle to kind of get things going. I'm going to stop for a second. I hope you stay with us and just try to get Matt back on the line. I guess he has some technical issues. Just bear with us for a moment. There you go. No worries.
Apologies. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you, see you. It's a little bit wobbly just because of the phone thingy, but
yeah, I'm on my phone. What a perfect time for my PC to decide to do the blue screen of death. Fantastic. Timing is everything.
Who says technology is not great?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Well, welcome.
What I said to you earlier about language? You didn't want to hear what I just said. Well, sorry. I have gone red now. For everyone who thinks I do look red, I've gone really red now. So
no
sorry.
Worries. All right, going back.
Where were we?
Yeah, we were talking about this mindset shift, and you were mentioning a lot about the fact that you want to get people to understand. I was saying to you, like in terms of agility, like in terms of basic shift, you want to get people to understand that if they're not being agile as a company, as you said, they might lose their position in the world, right? So in the case of Debenhams or like there are a famous number of retailers that have lost their space in the world because they weren't they weren't there, right? So that's and it's great to hear that from you, especially again as a veteran in the industry, like adopting that mindset and helping other leaders to adopt that mindset. That's quite interesting.
I think it's the mindset is more. It's less about product mindset. It's about change mindset. So how do you get a cultural change mindset? I think for me, it goes back to, I loved working at Waitrose in stores, absolutely loved it, but I had to do a mindset. I had to, while Sainsbury's was grocery as well, it was a completely different company. And actually, I've kind of been through that change. And ever since then, I've kind of been, open to change. It's very interesting to hear Chris, as CTO, he's leading the transformation that kind of we're going through, and his message is very much about this is why we need to change. He's painting the picture at the board level. So this is why we have to affect change, and this is the impact if we don't affect change in time. We will fall behind. So he and his predecessor before him, JJ, paint that very compelling picture. When you've got someone at the board level helping paint that compelling picture, it makes it so much easier for everyone else underneath to help support and drive that as well. And I think
so I agree with you completely about the notion of change. I think adopting a change mindset, regardless of product, almost, right? Saying, hey, we're open to do something differently or change our ways of working because we know if we don't adapt, we're going to die, kind of thing. I think that's key. Now, I do want to then connect it to the world of product management because still, for many people, and I know it sounds, for practitioners like yourself and myself and people on the call, I'm sure it sounds kind of weird to need to defend that, what is a product manager, what do they do, and all this kind of. But for a lot of people, for a lot of executives, still nowadays in big companies, they're like, okay, what is this team actually doing? They're responsible for a lot of stuff, and how do you actually instill that idea? Like, hey, you don't just need coders and developers and then the business to tell them what to do, but you have this middle layer in between, and it's go ahead.
It's about building that kind of that view of actually we're kind of facilitators between what the business want and what technology needs to deliver. So it's almost kind of taking where does the business want to head, what's its strategic goals, and then how's that aligned to our products and how's that aligned to our developers, but also putting that customer centricity layer around it. Now, we don't do that all on our own. We have our design and research teams to help support us there, who are far more skilled in that. And then obviously we have other support teams. We have architecture teams to support us as well to say, okay, right, we need to make these changes, but how does it fit into the wider either solution architecture or the wider enterprise architecture as well? So often we're facilitating lots of information between lots of disparate teams to help, try and drive kind of the right solutions. The big challenge, I think, often what you get from businesses is say, well, okay, right, we need to change something, and here is the solution to do it. But what they're often looking at it is actually, this is how we work in this company, and these are the systems we use, and these are the lenses we use, and so often the solution is restricted to what people know. It doesn't say, well, actually, what's going on in the wider world. What if we look at the problem? Actually, you've come up with a solution to solve it one way, but actually, there's 20 ways we could solve it, and actually, what we're also looking about is actually, as a business, we need to move off of certain platforms. We need to remove tech debt. We need to do less tactical things. We need to move more strategic. So it's being able to be that kind of voice, that person who can help them see beyond. And I think it's very, very difficult role. But then also being able to translate that down to your developers and to your testers in a language they understand as well. And, it's quite a difficult balancing act sometimes. I think the big challenge, and just talking anecdotally with lots of people in other companies, product is managed differently every single company, and the roles vary. So some don't have scrum masters, some don't have BAs, some don't even have testers. Product manager does everything. Some have all of them, some have kind of a hybrid, etc. But there seems to be an underlying theme that product is seen as a delivery function. We deliver. But actually, that's forgetting the shaping, the problem solving, the gathering of feedback, the analysis of data work that all kind of goes on.
Yeah. Of course. And that's really like I always find that that's probably the hardest thing for people to understand. I mean, you and I, again, talking about the problem versus the solution. And this is something that if you're a modern product practitioner, that you know this language and you understand it. For a lot of people, they're really struggling to understand that idea, even of like saying, hey, before we go and talk about what are we building here, let's talk about what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve for. And if we define that well, that's better. You're probably going to end up with something better, faster than if you just build stuff.
And I think some of the challenge has been actually to help, your business colleagues actually describe the problem. Because often they can describe the solution, but not the problem. Or they say, this metric's trending in the wrong direction, therefore we must have a problem. But sometimes you might not have a problem. So actually getting people to be able to really break down the problem to what it actually is. And what I've often seen as well is actually to say, well, we have a problem here, but actually maybe that problem may not be your product or your system's actual problem. It may be a downstream problem because the process is not being followed 5 systems away. And I've seen lots of, having been involved in big Oracle retail ERP transformations, what you've often seen is lots of tourniquets or fixes or tech debt incurred in systems where the problem surfaced, but no one's actually addressed the problem. The problem actually happens 10 systems downstream. If we product setup's wrong, of course it's going to ripple through and cause problems elsewhere. And it's helping people understand actually, let's find the root cause, we'll fix at root, because actually applying tourniquets, it doesn't really help. It builds up tech debt. It ends up making, any transformation ultimately more difficult as well.
No, of course.
So it's helping people understand, the bigger picture sometimes, rather than, I focus on this area. I say, I'm store operational. I see the problem. Actually, you're getting a problem because, someone hasn't done something in merchandising or buying or finance or somewhere else. Not to tar those people with brushes as well, because everyone makes mistakes. None of us are perfect.
That is always true. Yeah. I keep getting reminded by that by my kids every day.
As do my children, they remind me every day too.
Just making sure.
It's when the cat reminds you, you have to worry.
Exactly. By the way, we're seeing here in the chat some interesting conversations happening while we're talking about this. A lot to do with there's a lot of sentiment of like, hey, I'm also working in a delivery focused company. How the hell do I get these people who've been doing the same thing for 20 years to change their mind, right? So I think the essence of that's why I'm kind of like digging deep into that kind of thing. That change, that mindset shift is so hard, especially again for people who are the reason I'm sending you this is because you and I have been on a journey, and eventually we partnered together by you kind of bringing in us as a solution to Kingfisher, and this is not like a plug-in for us telling how awesome we are, but although we aren't.
Well, you're not bad. I'll give you that. You are pretty good.
I appreciate that, but that's not the point. The point is like you've been actually very successful in facilitating a very large change in Kingfisher in this context, right? So again, I'm curious to hear like what's your secret sauce about even like persuasion techniques. And you're saying it's a lot to do with big. I heard between the like kind of between your like the lines I'm hearing, one is showing bigger picture, actually like showing people like picture from different areas. I've heard also fear. I mean, which is a very good persuade, not fear as in I'm going to scare you, but fear as in like, hey, look at what happened in this company because they haven't adapted to change, right? So like, again, that's a very pointy way, but effective way of sharing with people the need for change. Do you have any other kind of like, your tips of like convincing, this senior old school exec or old school middle management of like, hey, why do we need this product management thing?
Well, it's one of the key things is to surround yourself with fellow evangelists as well. So you can't do it all on your own. So one of the key things is identify the people who think like you, feel like you as well. I was very lucky here at Kingfisher. We had a director called CN who despite gave him a head of steam. I said, my experience was using another product management tool at another retailer who we shan't name, Elad.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. But I was able to evidence, albeit anecdotally and, with some evidence as well, say the difference that actually putting that in made to that organisation and the time it saved us as product managers, the time it saved the senior leadership team by being able to get clarity and visibility. So I had an immediate champion in CM. She then gave me the head of steam and kind of said, do what you feel is right, gather some feedback, see what people feel. And we went out and obviously we demoed with people. And obviously then you went through RFI, RFP, and then we did our proof of concept with you and two other providers. And then we chose you. And obviously, it was a very measured kind of process that we went through. But throughout all of that as well, I was holding lots of meetings with senior stakeholders here in Kingfisher to introduce Craft to them and say, actually, once we've selected you, this is what Craft looks like. This is what we're doing, to get their buy-in, to help facilitate the journeys. And so, a lot of the senior team in Kingfisher would say, well, Matt did 2 hours with that, and a lot of just going out there, making yourself visible, putting yourself in front of people and saying, and demonstrating your passion, say, this is the difference I know it can make, and this is the difference how it can help us. This is what it will help us do. I mean, Kingfisher, like many other companies, had for product management, we were using Jira, we're using Miro, we're using PowerPoint, we're using Confluence, we're using Excel. So lots of disparate information in lots of different places. Roadmaps being updated. I have a roadmap in PowerPoint, which I then have to update in 10 other places. So I spend an hour a week updating those roadmaps. That's an hour of my week. Add that up over the year. That's over a week of my life just spent updating PowerPoint. I've got better things to do than update PowerPoint. And so have my team work. They've got better things to do. They can be focused on, being out with our colleagues in stores, being with our stakeholders, and spending time, coaching and helping our colleagues within our team. So a lot of it was very much about, just getting out there, but finding your other champions as well, the people who will support. So one of my colleagues here, Ben, has been an amazing supporting champion, and I think you might have been on the call when Ben delivered something that Craft to the wider team. So
I want to synthesize this for the group here as well. So it's for everybody who's on with us. So 2 points, another 2 points, great points as you mentioned is one, find your support group. So and I think honestly, this conversation, not just between the two of us, but also the people on the call and the people who are listening to us and the people who are kind of like the wider audience here. I think that's a great thing. By the way, the funny thing I see in the chat now that there's actually a few people from the same company that are talking to each other, like sharing their pain from the same company, which is it's kind of fantastic. But I do think actually having that line of support as well as people who are sharing your passion for this. And you'll find them, I think, in almost every company, within any technology group, you'll find the people who are fans of the world of product management, and that actually creates a movement, right? So I think that's and I love that point. And then the second point, which I can't overemphasize, I tell it to everybody all the time, and you do it, and I think that's eventually, from my perspective, that's your real magic in change management, like spending a tremendous amount of time on stakeholder management, like like it's dramatically more than anybody would assume beyond your day job of like delivering features and building stuff and doing your work. I say that with a parenthesis because if you can't get people to be convinced that what you're doing is important, everything else is going to be very difficult for you, right? So yeah.
I do feel there is a challenge sometimes, and obviously, what you don't want to do is force feed people as well, force things on people.
Of course,
it's a bit more subtle sometimes. I mean, I remember taking some feedback from someone at Tesco, and they knew about the analogy of north to south.
Yeah,
and they turned to me and said, me and one of my colleagues, Yi, who was awesome there, said, you realise you've got us pointing south over the last 2 years, and we haven't realised you've done it. And it's just very subtly we're just chipping away. It's changing their thinking, and that was a kind of real kind of for me and my colleague at the time. Yeah, that was kind of real kind of that was a fabulous moment. To actually we've shifted their mindset away from the stop giving me solutions, because I remember not long after I joined Tesco and said, you always build what we want, but never what we need. And it's like, okay, well, that's something. I'm now here. We're gonna look to kind of change. And that was, it's about executing that mindset, but being realistic as well. About some people, it's going to take time. 2 years sometimes it takes. And I always use this with people working my team. And especially when you change company, it's 3 months to comfort, 6 months to confidence, 2 years to expertise. And craft is going to go on the same journey. It's going to take us three months to get comfortable. Probably with Jira integration, we're probably about 2 months in now.
Yeah.
6 months, I think we'll be at that point of comfort. 2 years will be at the point of expertise as we kind of learn and grow with you. And it doesn't matter which one you're in. It's appreciating. It's not like flicking a light switch. Although obviously it is in this film, because the light will probably go off at some point.
Exactly.
Along with my computer.
So that's another great point. And I know it might sound a little bit depressing to some people on the call, but change actually takes time.
Yeah.
And it's like chipping in, slowly, and eventually getting. Some people, you might have a couple of conversations with them, and they'll be, oh my God, how did I not think about this myself? This is amazing. Yeah. We should immediately implement everything that you're saying. You're a genius. Many other people on almost all ideas in the world will basically say, well, but A, B, C, D, E. There are many reasons to resist change, right? So actually like setting up the time for on an ongoing basis and not being discouraged, as you talk to people more and more, not be and taking your wins slowly but surely, and eventually getting to that point that you mentioned in Tesco, which was like a really nirvana point of like saying, hey, actually, even without us noticing, you got us to where you wanted to get us, right? So that's very cool from a mindset perspective.
I mean, when you deliver, it really helps to understand who you're delivering to, and obviously, and that sounds like you kind of segment people. You can say, actually, I know who my evangelists are. I know who's like to be a follower. So they say, well, I'm neither here nor there, but change has come. I'll just follow it. And then obviously it's resistors, and obviously within resistors you can have degrees of resistance. From passive resistance to outright in your face resistance. And again, that's where you kind of invest most of your time. To say, how do I, start aligning those people's concerns. And see, it is challenging. It is exhausting. It can be depressing. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, because, once you've got one person convinced, and often, if you can turn one resistor, they often have a little circle of resistors around them. They will suddenly shift. Actually, you change one, actually you've changed five, and then you try to pick off the other one, and then you change the other ones. It's but this is where also your support network really helps as well. And having that senior level support and director level support, really does help. I've always found the best transformations have always landed, when you've had that, when you've got someone at the top who's also there championing and evangelizing as well. Yeah, trying to do it on your own, you are doomed to failure. But it has to be, and here goes the light goes off as well.
Great. So I really appreciate that's Matt. That's been super helpful. I want to talk about a little bit. I mean, we have some time left. And if, by the way, as a reminder to everybody on the call, if you do want to pose any questions, so feel free to kind of ask. I hope we answered the one question we had on the chat. But if you do have any other questions, feel free to add them in. But one question I have for you, especially as you came into the world of product management, from an outsider's perspective. You're not a developer, you're not a coder, you didn't grow up in technology, right? So that you grew up in the stores. What's your kind of tips for people who are trying to get into this, right? So like getting into the world of product management right now. And again, almost regardless of background, they could be like a new grad from university in any, like whatever, in computer science, or it could be like something like, so what's your, best practice advice on saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to go into this world of product management. How do I do that?
Well, first off, talk to someone who's actually in there. I think, you can read lots of books, you can read lots of theory, but, they're great to a point. Actually speaking with someone who lives and breathes it every day is probably, is the first kind of point in there. And that really helps you understand, what does the job entail? What does it mean? Because I've interviewed lots of people over the years, and they say, well, why do you want to be a product manager? And invariably, the worst interview is like they give you an answer is like, okay, but they clearly don't understand product management. They've done no kind of understanding. So understand, what product management is, but by speaking to people who actually do the job. Key things as well, actually understand the skills that a product manager needs to have as well. So there's probably a core set of skills. So understanding, what a vision is, what a strategy is. If you're looking at a specific area, what is that market? What is the competition you're kind of up against? Are you customer facing? Are you kind of colleague facing? Understand what a roadmap is, what a backlog is, and kind of how you do prioritization as well. So there's lots of kind of tools and techniques you can use. And if you want me to give you a plug, the guru reviews on Craft are kind of a real amazing part that really, really helps there. As I said to you at the time, it's a USP. But it's that understanding, what I call the core building blocks. Yeah, you don't have to be a developer. You don't have to necessarily work in it. So one of my POs came to me. I took a chance on him. 25 years in stores. He lived and spent 25 years in stores. So, and actually, in his first few weeks, he's like, oh my God, what have I done? But a year later, he's flying. He's dynamic. He's positive, and he's still exponentially learning every day. As I said, we're still a year to go to get to expertise. But yeah, he said, but when he interviewed, he said, I've read up on this, I've spoken to this person, I've learned this, and this is what I've understood. He'd gone out and built his own personal understanding. And that for me, the passion to learn, the passion to improve, kind of stood out more than anything else. So one is having a passion for it. You need to show a passion for it. Doing it because, okay, I want to do it because I think it pays a lot, or I think it'd be fun.
No, if somebody goes to product to be a product manager because it's fun, they haven't done product management.
Yeah, exactly. It can be fun, and it can.
No, of course, but you have to say no to a lot of people all the time. That's usually not the most fun job I can imagine, right? So.
But also as well, the bit I'll probably emphasize as well is to get into product management, understand the personal behavioural skills you need to be. You need to kind of have integrity. You kind of need to be. You need to be, know when to be candid. You know when to be defiant as well. So there's a whole host of personal values and skills that you really need to display as well, or feel confident on. But also as well, I'd say one of the great things about product management, and I encourage people, is to be honest about what you're lacking. So I remember I'd been at Tesco probably about 4 months, and I applied for lead product manager. So as a product manager, applying to be a lead kind of product manager. And I said, I've got all these behavioural skill sets, that kind of, and I measured myself, 1 to 3 out of all of them. And I said, someone won, and I said, some of them, I'm good at networks, but I've only been here 4 months, so my network is nowhere near where I want it to be. So that's a 1. But there's areas here, there's certain areas, sometimes, people can know when I'm a bit annoyed. Controlling, my emotions, sometimes my emotional intelligence probably isn't as good as it can be. And I've children who definitely say that.
Being honest about your flaws as well.
Being honest, but actually knowing what your gaps are and what are you doing to address your gaps, but also being very clear about these are my strengths and this is how I look to hone my strengths. So you're trying to present yourself in the best possible light. So actually showing a bit of vulnerability, but a bit of integrity and curiosity. Curiosity is really key as well. I like people who are curious and want to know more and want to absorb and literally watch and learn from around everything around them.
All right, I'm stopping you because we have 2 questions. We have 4 minutes and 2 questions.
Okay.
Well, let's see what we get to. So Debbie's asking us, like in terms of the large enterprises, how does the product management world, the digital product management, like interface with product of the actual product themselves? Like, what's the interaction, I guess, between, from the sound of it, between the world of software product management and the actual business units? So 2 minutes, Matt, 2 minutes.
In terms of business units, obviously we have certain people within, in my world, I have certain people within business units. So obviously I have people who maybe run define all the processes we follow in store, or things like our asset protection partners. So my liaison tends to be with them. So we have kind of key business stakeholders we face out to. In terms, I kind of look at, you've got your first tier, then there might be a second tier, a third tier for stakeholders. So often you'll use this stakeholder here to influence maybe your second and third kind of stakeholders as well. And also a lot in my world, they're the operational people who are at the stores 4 or 5 days a week, supporting our colleagues in stores.
I see. So you have an interaction, like a direct interaction with them, but does it align one-to-one? Like every product line in software will have its own counterpart, or does it kind of like, a matrix organization?
It's more of a matrix. Obviously, the bigger the retailer, the bigger the matrix invariably, because actually, if I take my product, it traverses a number of different capabilities and features and functions. Actually picking resides with here, stock control resides over here, goods receiving resides over here. Carrier management resides with the different set of stakeholders over here. So you're managing different pools of stakeholders, some of whom are interrelated out in the business as well. So yeah, but then it's all that spider's web is always there in the background.
All right, I see. Well, thanks a lot, Matt. Matt, I wanted to. I'm going to stop here just because we're out of time. This has been a fantastic conversation. Not unexpectedly, but even without having a laptop. So that's I think that's the first one I've done where we lost a laptop in the process. So that's fantastic. I wanted to thank a lot our audience, people who were on the call. Thank you a lot for the engagement and for asking the questions. I really appreciate that. I hope you had a good time, and that you've learned from Matt's experience and from his sharing his tales from the trenches of the world of retail and from his long career in that space. So hopefully that was useful. And as usual, pleasure talking to you, Matt, as usual.
But thank you so much. Apologies again for my laptop deciding, this is the time to embarrass you. Obviously I've offended it somehow. But no, thank you, everyone. Obviously, any questions we didn't pick up, obviously I can look at the chat afterwards and I'll work with Maya and get them all responded to. So
perfect.
So thank you to everyone for joining. Great to have so many people from around the world joining as well. So yeah, it's really appreciated that you found time today. So big thank you from me on that one.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. You. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.